So I told you she's the boss. There you go.
Definitely. I suppose like you mentioned, part of past soccer growing up with Paul Ashworth, and then lucky enough got my apprenticeship at Peterborough, and so that's where I was for 7 or 8 seasons. Quickly moved on to Notts County, and this is when I become a bit of a journeyman pro. Went from Notts County down to Exeter. At Exeter for a period, 3.5 years. Lucky enough to move back home to Norwich for a couple of years as more of a cheerleader role, as for Steve says it.
Oh, not
and
at all.
then signed for Bristol Rovers. Had 2.5 seasons at Bristol Rovers down in Bristol. The kids were born down in Bristol. Then up to Tranmere for a period of time, and that's when my playing career come to an end. And that's when I then went into coaching into an academy.
Have your kids got the Bristol twang then, Matty, or not?
They did have. So they had a bit of a Bristol twang. Then we moved, when I signed for Tranmere, we lived in West Kirby, which is facing North Wales, so the other side's of Birkenhead. But they went to a nursery there, and James came home one day and was going, "Zaddy."
So he thought, I'm going to move.
A little bit of a Scouse twang, and that coincided with me losing my role. So it was time to get back to Norfolk.
Oh, brilliant. It was a bit of, I find there's a little bit of similarity between your Somerset, Bristol and your Norfolk. A bit of a farmer's kind of accent going on there, isn't there?
There definitely is. To be fair, if the Tranmere role hadn't come up, we'd still be in Bristol. So we'd all have a really strong accent, which we'd love. I know I just have to ring Marcus Stewart to get my fix of Bristolian.
Yeah, he's proper Bristolian, isn't he? Just before we crack on, I don't suppose you were at Cambridge United for a time, I think, Gilly, as a youth player, weren't you? I don't suppose you remember going to Bramley Lakes.
I do, yeah.
You do. I was a very young coach there, and that was like almost a character building weekend.
It was, and the village I live in now, obviously, is just up the road from Bramley Lakes. So when I go out running, I go past Bramley Lakes a lot, and it brings back loads of memories.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't realise.
I think what happened, Paul Ashworth took all his past soccer teams, and we became Cambridge overnight, more or less.
Right.
Their academy. And I was at Cambridge until Paul left and went to Peterborough and took me with him. But
right.
For us Norfolk lads, we would train one night a week at Bramley Lakes. And that was all sorts, doing press ups on the lake that had frozen over.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Doing the assault course, all sorts of stuff that you couldn't get away with now.
Yeah.
But it was brilliant. It was run by an ex-Marine, right. which was great fun at the time. No football involved, but
really, yeah, I remember
it. For fitness and certainly that psychological edge. Let's call it that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like you say, press ups on frozen lakes. I don't think we get away with that now.
No.
No. So tonight, Gilly, well, thanks for joining us. It's going to be largely around your transition from playing to coaching. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions. There might be some questions in the chat box which we'll address as well. So the first one is, I guess, when did you start thinking about coaching, i.e. becoming a coach? Was it early on in your playing career? Was it maybe when you picked up some injuries, or was it, you'd finished playing, you thought, shit, what am I going to do now?
It's a bit of both, really. I think, well, actually my first coaching qualification I did was in tennis. And that was when I was probably 24, 25. I just dropped out of the league from Notts County to sign for Exeter. And I think at that stage then I was looking at all sorts of avenues.
Right.
But football-wise, I was always interested in coaching. Obviously, my brother was a coach, so I was around it from a young age. I would probably say my period at Norwich made me feel like it could be a pathway for me. Around that sort of time, I started taking my B licence. Then going to Bristol Rovers, I think that accelerated. I had 3 knee ops in 18 months on my right knee. And at that point, I felt, do you know what, I've not got too long left. So that accelerated probably my education as far as qualifications.
Yeah.
And it's at that point then I thought, do you know what, I really enjoy watching people work. I'd like to have a go myself. And that's, I suppose, around that 30, 31 age I was at that point at Bristol Rovers. I felt that it was something that I wanted to take forward.
Brilliant. And just touch on the tennis bits. You're a bit of a mean tennis player yourself, are you?
I used to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, haven't picked up a racket for a while. Although I did play the goalkeeper coach last year,
Okay.
and beat him quite easily.
Oh, okay. Challenged you, did he? Because your brother's a good tennis. Your brother's a good tennis player, isn't he? In the coach.
Yeah, he's a tennis coach. So that was certainly an avenue I thought about at one point. But luckily, I stayed in football a bit longer. Managed to get myself back in the football league, and yeah, really pleased that I stuck at it. If I'm honest.
Yeah, brilliant. And just on your brother very quickly, and your brother was a good footballer as well, wasn't he? A bit older than you, and a bit of a boss man at Roxton Football Club. I remember he gave me an absolute lesson once in the middle of the pitch.
He was a bit more aggressive than me.
A little bit.
We're built slightly differently.
Yeah, he was an absolute tank, wasn't he? So you talked about your A for B. Where did you take your B license, Kelly?
I took it at St George's.
Okay, how was that?
Good. So I was living in Bristol at the time, traveling up to St George's. I think I did it was the 9-day intense one.
Yeah.
With the PFA at the time, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Still playing at that point, but wanted to get under my belt. So I think it was 9 days out of a summer, one summer, one close season. So really pleased that I did it. At the time, it felt a big effort.
Mm-hmm.
Me and a couple of other lads from the club did it, and just really glad that I went through it. And I think that once I stopped playing, it stood me in good stead to already be on that sort of coaching qualification ladder.
Was it what you expected, Gilly, the coaching, or were you not? Did you have any expectations, or did it pleasantly surprise you, or what was the course like?
Brian Burrows was the main guy on the course, and I loved him. Actually, I'd done a level 2 with him as well earlier on in my career, but it was okay. I think at that point, you think you know everything. I've been in the game a long time, played over 500 games at that point, but it really took me out of my comfort zone, if I'm honest.
Right.
Really did, and I was really nervous. I'll be totally honest. I was really nervous, but I felt that taking me out of my comfort zone, I felt better after it, certainly.
Brilliant. And we'll stick on qualifications if you don't mind. So you then obviously did your A license, presumably.
Yes.
Again at St George's.
Yes, I did. So I was at Tranmere at this point. So that's my coaching role at Tranmere. I went as player assistant manager. Again, I probably should have made the decision to retire at that point. I went with, a Bristolian, Rob Edwards.
That's right. Yeah, remember. Yeah.
So I went up to help Rob, and actually, I don't think I was much help in the end, either playing or coaching.
Right. Okay. Honest reflection.
Yeah, I think that I was coming to the end. I was 33, 34 I was, not affecting too much on the pitch,
right.
But trying to help him as much as I could off it, and perhaps didn't help him enough, but gained loads from that experience. But yeah, that's when I took my A license at that point. So part 1 at that point, and then this part 2 was when I was at Norwich in the academy.
And do you think the elements on the courses, being A, prepare you for the role you're doing now, or the role you've done at Norwich? And we'll go into that a bit. But do you think they prepare you, or?
Parts do. Yeah, I think the preparation side of it really does. I think delving down into real detail, I think perhaps not so much, but they're giving you ways of getting the information out of your own head, and presenting it to players so they know what you're trying to get out of them, I suppose. I found I did the senior pros A license part 1, and then I did the normal part 2 because it clashed with work. And obviously you then coming across school teachers, and I found it brilliant. I think you got more varied opinions in the second one. I think that doing the senior pros course, the first part, you're all professionals or ex-professionals. I think you can get a little bit tunnel visioned on opinions and stuff, and can't look at it from a different angle. So I really enjoyed taking the second part with with various different people on it.
It's quite interesting because I have my own thoughts on it, but sometimes on social media, people, ex-pros like yourself, get criticised a little bit. Or no, not you don't get criticised, but the process is criticised. That maybe you're kind of fast tracked through your quals. But I mean, I personally feel that if you play over 500 league games, professional football, you've got a bit of an advantage over people like me. But do you think that does help or set you in good stead to be a coach?
I don't. I think if you go into it as an ex-professional thinking, I should just be an under-23s coach. I had this discussion earlier with John, actually. You're looking at it the wrong way. I think you need to be in the trenches. You need to go through all that type of stuff. I think that we'll get onto Norwich, but working with the under-15s stood me in unbelievably good stead for where I am now. If I could have had that academy experience before I went to Tranmere, I feel I'd have been a lot better help to Rob.
Okay.
Around session design, everything else that goes with it, the way I dealt with certain situations. I think that's players have got it wrong who think they can just finish playing and then become a coach. And I actually think I played until I was 34. You hear of players that finish early through injury, Brendan Rodgers, Eddie Howe, them type of people they get more experience early on, which obviously helps them. I think the playing career helped, but I don't think it's the be all and end all.
It's interesting, Gilly. I was invited up about a couple of summers ago, I think, to Hartbury College to work with Mike Cook. I think you know Mike, don't you?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
So he's brilliant, isn't he? And he was tutoring a UEFA B, a PFA UEFA B, and he said, "Right, can you come up? We need another pair of hands." And I was driving up the M5 really nervous because I thought ex-pros, pros, and they were all brilliant. Now, because they were really, really keen for feedback, the guys. And I'm thinking, what can I offer? But even though they played the game, they were saying, like, I've never thought about distances. I've never thought about session design, the realism of practices. And it's quite refreshing for me. And I've came away with a lot of confidence. Also, I was refreshed to hear like the pros openly saying, like, we are new to this. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think especially ones that are still playing, they've obviously got an interest in coaching. I think it's the ones that retire and think, oh, I'll have a go at that because they've got. I think that it's important that you're going into it for the right reasons, and I felt that it was certainly something that I was going into it because I wanted to be a coach and I wanted to help players that had been in my situation.
Had any of your managers in the past or anyone in around your teams said, "Gilly, you'd be a good coach," or your management material, or did you get that impression anyway?
I was always pretty opinionated, and I think I was captain at most of the clubs I'd been at. I felt I had a tactical understanding of the game. I think when you've got no physical attributes like me, you needed to know the game inside out really, and be able to see different pictures and have a good tactical understanding and reading of the game. So I think that helped. But as far as coaches saying I could be a coach, I don't really know. I think that I was inspired to be a coach from coaches I had a real connection with, managers and coaches I had a real connection with. And I think I've taken that into my coaching. That connection with the players is really important to me.
I'm going to come on to that in a bit. Actually, you won't know this. I don't think you'll know this, but I watched you play for a Norwich team at the Walks at Kings Lynn, and you were the old boy amongst a load of kids. And I actually watched you closely, and I thought you were brilliant with the younger players. And I thought then, there's a coach in there. Because I'm always looking for things. I've got my coach's hat on. I thought, there's a coach. Do you remember the game? Do you remember that?
I remember the game. We'd just been promoted to the Championship.
Okay.
And I didn't make the pre-season tour to Germany.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So I think there was 2 or 3 of us that were left behind. So we trained with Neil Adams and Gary Holt, who were taking the 18s and 23s at that point, the reserve team. So we stayed behind for 9 or 10 days with those. And we played Norwich United and Kings Lynn were the 2 games we had. And I thoroughly loved the games. And I think it was around that sort of time, 29, 30, that my role obviously changed. My role actually as a player changed at that club. Wasn't a big part of the team. I very much thought, where could I add value at that point? I was at my hometown club. It was a dream move. Hadn't really turned out the way I'd wanted it to as far as playing. But at that point, I'd probably become a little bit more maturer and felt, how can I add value? And that was certainly with young players. During that pre-season tour, I had a relationship with Gary Holt already, so I didn't want to let him down. I wanted to set a good example. When the gaffer Paul Lambert came back from that Germany tour, I didn't want them to say, well, Gilly's not done this or done that. It was at that stage, it was a good stage of my career for me as far as maturing and taking responsibility, I suppose.
And I'm assuming then that connection with Paul Lambert, it was then, and the reason why you're probably working with him now. Would be right in assuming that?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I've had real selfish periods in my career, really selfish periods where I must have been a nightmare to coach or manage. I think that's that being opinionated again and having real selfish moments. But I think around that time, obviously age-wise, I got a little bit older, had a bit better understanding of environments and team environments, and I think if I'd acted differently at Norwich, I wouldn't have gone into coaching there. So I think it actually helped the way I attacked that period of not playing. And obviously, if I hadn't been professional during that period, Paul Lambert would have never picked the phone up to me again, let alone employ me. So I think that was a big period for me, around that 29, 30 mark.
Brilliant. Libby, I forgot where I was then. I was just in my own little world, just having a chat with Gilly. I'm loving it. Sorry, are there any questions for anyone else? I'm being selfish now.
There is a question, yes. This is from Andre. That hasn't played at such a standard like as yourself, and decided to become a coach. Do you think the best pathway to follow is starting with academies and young ages and working up the ladder, or working with an adult team that plays at high standards will be the best practice and experience for, well, him obviously as a coach to develop and learn?
I would say do as much coaching as you can, regardless of what the standard is, what the age group is. I think I would recommend just time on the grass. I alluded to it earlier, but my time at Norwich, I went in as a YDP coach, youth development phase coach, and taking the under-15s were my main responsibility at that point. And I tried loads of different stuff. I failed loads of times. I struggled. I was nervous. I would have been more comfortable coaching a first team at that point than an under-15s team. But I think that period stood me in really good stead to where I am now. Just because I could make mistakes. 15-year-old kids don't particularly care if you get something wrong or you make mistakes. As far as ego is concerned, I haven't got one regarding that. So I think that that was a real steep learning curve for me, but one I'm really appreciative that I went through. So I would just say do as much coaching as you can, make as many mistakes as you can, and try as much as you can.
Brilliant. Right, my turn again. I'm not. That's enough now. Back to me. So I've got loads of questions, Gilly. I think we probably touched on this earlier. I don't know if we really got to the bottom of it. As a player, did you appreciate the difficulty of coaching, or did you simply do as you were told, without too much consideration about the planning and detail that went into sessions?
Yeah, interesting. Early on, it was very much a command style coaching, wasn't it? My first senior manager was Barry Fry. So
right,
pretty much whatever Baz said, you did at that point. Although he probably only coached in the psych and social corners, didn't know too much about tech tac. But I think at that point, I would question quite a lot.
Right.
Again, probably strong opinions, but I questioned quite a lot. And I think a lot of that could have been taken out of my hands with a little bit of reasoning. This is why we're doing this. And that's certainly something I use now. I use a lot of reasoning with players and say, we're doing this because, what are your thoughts on this? Because I want to get this outcome. I think at the time I questioned quite a lot, and I think that can be taken totally out if you explain to players why you're doing something. And I'm not convinced that happened loads in my career as a player. And so I think that as far as the planning, preparation, area size, I never put too much thought into that, and that was something that really caught me out. And I think that was something I learned going into that academy environment. And but during my career, I think you knew the coaches that had put time and effort into sessions. I was always one that enjoyed doing new stuff, didn't like repetition loads as far as session design. So I would always, and that's something probably I take with me now. I try and challenge the players however much you can every day, not do too much repetition as far as session design, and just because the game's all about making decisions, so they need to make decisions within sessions.
That was going to be one of my questions, but so I'm going to try and lead on from it. So one of my questions was going to be, were there any parts of sessions that you hated as a player? So I'm getting the impression you quite like the game related stuff, the goal at each end, the ball moving, that kind of stuff.
I did. As far as constant practices, I love a passing drill.
Right.
So
yeah,
but they can be different ones every day.
Right. Okay.
So I do like constant repetition practices, but I just like the variation of them, doing different ones all the time. Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is you need to do in training what you do on a Saturday. So if you're having small-sided games all the time, how much exposure are you getting to working over bigger distances, 1v1 battles, defenders having to defend crosses, not very often in a small-sided game. So I just think the session has to be in relation to what they're about to do on a Saturday. I think that's a vital. For me, it needs to be stuff you do in a game. It has to be competitive and it has to be fun. They're the three things that I would like to tick in all my sessions, really.
Brilliant, Gilly. Your first coaching role was in youth development, really, with the 15s. If we I guess you had your time with Tranmere, but if we say that you're saying you learned quite a bit in the 15s at Norwich. How different was that to the role you're doing now? Because presumably the 15s, you're looking at producing players, helping to develop, whereas now, I guess there's that pressure of we need 3 points on Saturday. How different is it?
Yeah, I'm glad we've skirted over Tranmere because I did get a sack there after 12 games. I was really nervous about going into youth development. I think that I was nervous, but I was looking forward to it. I was excited. Obviously, it's about developing individual players. I felt that I had a good understanding of trying to help young lads, but that was young pros at that time, coming out of playing. I found it interesting that, all about youth development, all about the individual. The first question I ever got asked after a game was, what was the score? So that didn't really go hand in hand. And I thought, are they looking to develop individuals, or do they just want you to try and win on a Saturday and a Sunday? So I found that a bit contradictory to start with in an academy environment, rather than did we have the three best players on the pitch, for instance. But there was lots going on in the academy. I suppose my learning was accelerated over a 6-month period really, really quickly as far as academy football and development. Compared to the role I'm doing now, there's obviously the first team manager, assistant manager, and I'm first team coach. I pretty much attack every day the same as I did then. I think I'm trying to help individuals improve. I go from the foundation of putting myself in their shoes every day. What might those lads need that didn't play? What individual bits can I do with the lads that I saw from the game on Saturday? So as far as obviously there's jobs at stake. You're evaluated on 3 points on a Saturday. You really are. But as far as the way I approach my role, it's very similar in a lot of ways. Very similar. Trying to help players improve, trying to help them progress their careers, trying to add value to them for themselves and also the football club. I'm very much of the approach that if you improve individuals, the team will benefit. And that's still the approach I take. I have a little bit of criticism from some quarters regarding having too much empathy for players. But I feel that's a real strength of mine. I think that I've made thousands of mistakes like they're going through, and so I can put myself in their shoes, which helps, I think.
Just seen Libby's put in the chat. There's a case of bullying here, I'm sure. Get your questions in, guys, to stop Steve talking. I'm not sure. I might take that to tribunal. So Ginger's on. So Ginger's asked, and it follows quite nicely. Ginger said,
honest, as soon as I wrote that, everyone was flooding in with questions.
Well, you asked the question that Ginger's asked then. Mark Tracy is Ginger, by the way.
There's quite a few from.
Well then, Libby.
But this one links on quite well. What's the most important value to support young players with?
Most important value to support young players. Well, it's a pretty well-known saying, but young players don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think that's vital for me. I think that building relationships, building connection. I would have gone about it similar with under 15s, under 16s, and under 18s as I do with senior players now. I think that you need a certain amount of credibility with senior players before you go in, but I think they soon suss you out if you can't back it up. And I think if you're not authentic, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, I think they suss you pretty quickly. So I think that making sure that even criticism's coming from a good place, that they know I care about them and they know that I want the best for them. I then think you can more or less be as honest as you possibly can be with players once they know the criticism's coming from a good place.
And then sort of flip that. There's another great question. How do you handle players that lose confidence or criticize a manager through leaving them out? Or also, how do you handle those that are opinionated and have a big ego and have status in the first team?
It's tricky, and I'll be totally honest. Sometimes I stick it on the manager. No, it's really tricky, and I think that's why it's important to have that connection and relationship with them, that honesty with them. I think as far as I would like to think I'm pretty consistent. We're going through a bad spell at the minute as far as results are concerned, and I think it's my job to be consistent every day. And sometimes that's harder than others, but I think it's really important that I'm seen as consistent in my approach, the way I try and energize the group. I think that's vital. So I think that if you show a certain level of consistency, you can handle those situations okay. There's obviously always tricky players. Ultimately, they're coming from their own standpoint. Like I said earlier, I'll always try and put myself in their shoes. I've been a player that's been left out before. One example, we had a lad that wanted to go on loan the last day of January. Said, I want to go on loan. It would be quite easy for me to think he doesn't want to play for us, or if I went to the manager with it. But ultimately, he just wants to play football. He's a footballer, he wants to play. So I try to look at it from his point of view, and I think that's vital. Ultimately, I want something, he wants something. Can we work it out and see if we can come up to what works for both parties, really?
And when you say, there's a great question here from Matt. When you say, you sort of step into their shoes, because obviously you've been there. Was there any point as a player you wanted to step in and coach? And if so, how did you manage that, sort of not being, the big manager when you're actually the player?
Well, like I alluded to earlier, I was a nightmare at some points. I'm really selfish at some points of my football career, and obviously matured as it went on. But I think that's helped me recognise when players are selfish. I think there's probably a period at Exeter where I was club captain, and I was a terrible captain. I felt that I was probably too opinionated at the time. I maybe didn't put the manager and the team first at that point. And so that's probably the closest I've got to maybe thinking I knew best at that stage, I would say. I think I was lucky at the time to have a manager that I did in Paul Tisdale, who unfortunately got the sack from the Gas yesterday. That I'll tell it story. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying it.
Go on.
I tried to get a move back to Cambridge from Exeter, and I probably went about it in totally the wrong way. I was living in Bristol at the time, traveling down to Exeter, and I was traveling back home to Bristol, and a text come through on my phone after we'd had a couple of run-ins. Tiz didn't have confrontation. He just avoided it. But he texted me saying, "Gilly, I'm going to kill you with kindness." And that's the first. Which is amazing. That's the first time a manager. Normally, you just butt heads, and the player normally gets his own way. The manager wants you out. But Tiz handled that situation unbelievably, and I think that's probably stood me in good stead as well, dealing with difficult situations. And I ended up getting my head down. We got promoted at Wembley that season, and actually got promoted again the following season. So his management of that situation was ideal, really.
So good. Can I crack on, Steve?
Yes, I've got the ump now, Libby. I've got the ump. So you'll need me in a minute when you run out of questions.
Guys, keep firing them in. It's good. There's a good one here from Gary. Matt, I know someone who played for Wrexham as a left back for 3 years and was never coached as how to be better in that position, as he was told that he was signed because he was a left back. Would you say that's like in the past, and was the case, or has it changed in any way, or is it still like that?
As far as not being coached when you sign for a club?
Yeah, and I think his point was that he was signed because he was a left back and hadn't really, moved from that, and hadn't been coached how he was better in that position, but just because he was a left back.
Yeah. Sorry, I think knowing Gary, I think I know what he's getting. I think it's right. We signed you as a left back. You should know what you're doing. Crack on.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's I think I listened to a podcast last week. I think it might have been Brian Dean, talking about, because he'd gone for a big fee as a centre forward. They just expect that you can score goals and you don't need coaching. So I found that really interesting. It is one of my pet hates that it sort of links with session design as well and playing small-sided games. If you're a left back playing a small-sided game all the time, how often are you getting exposed to being 1v1 against a right winger, defending large areas or having to stop crosses, backing up a winger? So I can see it, and I can also see being in a first team environment. So if I go back to development environment, every session was for the individuals. So we would use sparring partners a lot. So a session could be, I'm going to put the right winger up against our left back. The right winger needs some 1v1 stuff coached today. The left back needs to do 1v1 stopping crosses, whatever it might be. And it was a real individual approach. You go into a first team environment, and especially this season, for example, that we've got 21 games left in 13 weeks. It's very much a maintenance cycle. So I get frustrated when if you cannot coach or help players improve. Like I said earlier, my main role, I feel, is to help individuals improve. If they go 2 or 3 days without doing something they're going to do on a match day, then we've probably failed them as coaches. I think that it is hard, and I think some managers will use, well, we're playing again in 2 days, we're playing again in 3 days. It's just a maintenance cycle that physically we just got to recover them and get them ready for the next game, rather than actually helping the individual. Yeah. I'm doing a study at the moment for a project I'm on around individual development coaches, because I really think that in whatever time in the future that they'll be really prevalent in the game. I think that improving individuals not only has a business case for football clubs, but has real value to overall team performance. And I think that if you're not trying to improve individuals and you're just concentrating on the whole as the team, I think you're missing a trick, really.
Is that part of your pro license study, or is that a different?
It is, yeah. It's the final study on that, and
Brilliant.
You can choose whatever you wanted. So I've gone down the individual development specialist coach, whatever you want to call it. And having a little look at how it might look in the future game, because I think it will be really, really popular.
I think you listened to with Gaffer's webinar the other day, and he talked a lot about how there's a lot of one-to-one coaching, isn't there, and position-specific individual stuff.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more. I know it's left the FA now with their specialist coach model, because they're in and out of possession, but they could really zoom in on individuals or small units of teams and help them improve. And I think that staffing wise, I think that some bigger clubs have loads of staff, and so I was lucky enough to listen to Stuart Pearce last week do a Q&A, and he spoke about there's 5 members of staff at the West Ham first team. 4 of them have been managers, but they can really delve down into individuals or small units, because there's 5 members of staff, and I know that's not everyone can do that, but I think it's so important. The British cycling, Dave Brailsford, for instance, all about small marginal gains and stuff, small improvements, and I think that if you improve 11 individuals in your team, your team's going to get better.
Brilliant.
Another good one from Mark here. Matt, do you have a mentor that you turn to?
I probably have 3 or 4 that I would speak to for advice. I think that been lucky enough to play under some really good coaches and managers. I would always pick their brains if I'm in a bind with something or want to discuss something, how they'd go about it. I think that having been on the pro license journey, they're encouraging you to maybe search for people you can speak to outside of the industry, which is maybe something I'm missing at the moment. I would probably say my wife's the best sounding board as far as outside of the game. I could leave on a Friday, come back late on a Saturday night, and she probably wouldn't know who we played.
Gilly, is she there? Is that why you're saying this?
No, she's
in the background.
She's upstairs. But I think that's really useful. She's been unbelievably supportive. It's good to have someone that's distant away from your day to day, and I think that really helps me. John actually mentioned the 3 lanes, didn't he, the other night? Mine's 3 glass balls, and trying to juggle the 3 glass balls of career, health and fitness and family, and not letting any of them drop. And I think Bethan, she does care obviously about football and my job, but because she's that distant from it, it really helps me maintain a level of consistency at home.
Yeah. Great answer. One from David here. How much autonomy do you have in training in relation to the manager's philosophy and how he wants to play on Saturday?
It's interesting. I think when I first went in, I was obviously feeling my way into the role. I hadn't worked with him before as a coach on that side of it. I think that I was probably a little bit tentative at that point. I think now I've been there over nearly 2.5 years working together. I think that I now can read the signs. When he's pretty adamant about something, I know to back off. If he offers it up to the room, and I'll obviously, like I've suggested earlier, quite opinionated on what we should be doing, and he's okay. He's okay. He's not on the call, is he?
I think so.
I think as a coach, you always want more responsibility, but of course you need to earn that. At the end of the day, it's all our jobs at stake, but the manager's the one that bears the brunt of the criticism. So I think it's quite good that we have discussions in and around what we do during the week, but obviously he'll have the final say on that.
Gilly, can I just, moving on from that, do you have a particular role on match day? Are you given tasks on match day, like what's the opposition structure, or to your own, the back 4 unit, or is it just a sounding board on match day?
So I'll be in charge of all set plays, and so mainly that's making sure people are doing their jobs they should be during the first half. If we're making subs in the second half, I'll then be giving the information to the subs. I think during this period of no fans, I've gone and stood as high as I can in stadiums.
Okay.
and had the earpiece in, which I found really beneficial, and I can relay messages on about what might be causing us a problem, how we can cause the opposition problems, and so I've enjoyed that side of it. That's been good. So as far as match days are concerned, I've had those responsibilities ever since I've been in. But like I said, I've enjoyed standing up a bit higher this year, being able to see the picture slightly differently.
Is that what stops the likes of you from sitting up there? That normally the fans, because I know some do it and some start to do it, and I know when I go and watch City, and I love getting as high as I can and seeing the pitch, the downwards vision. Can you see you see the gaps and the spaces? But is it the fans that stop you from doing
that? Yes and no. I could go and sit up higher if I wanted. I suppose it's just the access. As where I stand at the moment at home games, especially, I can just walk up and down a stand. If I want to go and speak to the manager next to him, I can just walk down and see him. I suppose when I left Tranmere, there was a gap of 7 months where we stayed up in Liverpool, and I did scouting for Norwich at that point, and so you're then seeing the game differently from up high. And I really enjoyed that, and I feel that helped my coaching, because I was doing opposition analysis for some of the 23s games, watching some of the loan players at that point that Norwich had out. So the Murphys would have been out on loan at that point, and I felt that it really helped me to concentrate and look at the game differently. I can sit and watch it on telly, and you don't really take it all in properly. You can't see the whole picture. Where I think that 6 or 7 months I did scouting really helped my coaching, because you've got a real bird's eye view of the game. You're seeing how people maybe press or how they play out from the back, whatever it might be. So I've managed to do that this year, which is good, sitting up a bit higher.
Brilliant, thanks. Go on, Libby, over to you again, because I think Gaffer and Ginger are pelting some questions in here, aren't they?
There's some good ones.
Make sure they don't hog it, though. Let other people have a go.
I'll ask one from Mark first, and then we'll head on to Gaffer, okay? Have you got to know yourself a lot better as a person and coach since the qualifications? And do you think you did the quals at the right time for yourself?
I think knowing yourself is absolutely vital. I've done all sorts of Myers-Briggs, Spotlight during the qualifications, during the assessment centre for the pro licence. I think that's unbelievably vital to know what you're like and how you react in certain situations. I think going through all different experiences has obviously helped me to understand myself a little bit better. But I do think that's vital. What was the first part? Sorry, Libby.
Yeah, that was the first part, and then the second part was: do you think you did the qualifications at the right time for yourself? Do you think actually you could have done them earlier or later? I think that's what he was getting at.
I would say I don't think I could have done them earlier. I think that I probably wasn't at a stage in my maturity to take them earlier. I think at that stage, being 28, 29 was probably ideal. I knew I was coming towards the end, a lot of knee trouble, like I said. And once I left Norwich and signed for Bristol Rovers, I sort of knew at that point that I didn't have loads of time left playing. So I think I'm chuffed that I did them before I finished playing, because I think that's vital. Like I touched on earlier, alluded to earlier, if you're a player that finishes now and just thinks, you know what, I'll try and take a 23s team, it's just not going to happen. You'll get found out, and then it's too late.
Right. This is the next one's a great question. Gaffer's on it. What would your own backroom team look like when you become a manager? What do you think you will need in relation to your own strengths and weaknesses?
He's after a job there, isn't he? He's fishing for a job there, isn't he?
Trying to be social sick. Yeah, really good question. Obviously, we talk a lot about people that complement your personality. Some people want people that contradict their personality, and that you dovetail nicely. I think the most important thing to me is that your core values align, and I think that's regarding honesty, humility, integrity, I think they're absolutely non-negotiables for people that I work with. I think if you're not aligned with your core values, I think it could spell disaster, if I'm honest. So that's vital. Like I touched on before, I like people that are fun. I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but you've got to enjoy what you do. A competitive, want to win, like the session design, I suppose, really competitive, enjoy fun, and want to improve players. I think there's lots about having a real diverse backroom team now. So I know that people would look outside of the football industry to maybe appoint someone. Pep obviously did it, and with the polo player, didn't he? So I think you have to feel comfortable with the people you appoint because you spend a lot of time with them, a hell of a lot of time with them. I think that sort of integrity part for me would be the most important.
Just looking at John's gaffer's question, do you harbour ambitions to be a manager, Gilly, or do you see yourself as a coach, or have you not thought that far ahead, or what are the ambitions?
I'll always see myself as a coach, whether I'm a head coach. I would love to have a go at being a head coach. As far as any ambitions of it being soon, I don't. If something came tomorrow, brilliant. If it didn't, I got no problem. I think my job satisfaction is from, like I said, being aligned with people you're working with and helping players. I think that's the biggest part for me. If I can do that and be a head coach, brilliant, which I think you can. I think you can connect with players, have good relationships with players. That may sound all a little bit fluffy, but I really think that's important, that connection to being a leader rather than a manager. I think.
Sorry, go on, Gilly. Sorry for interrupting.
No. I think that way some football clubs are structured now helps that even more. So if you have a technical director or sporting director, and you're the head coach, you're left to coach the players, improve the players, improve the team, improve the team style of play. I'd probably say there are three main things. I think that suits people that see themselves as coaches, but also want to lead.
What does it look like at Ipswich? Does Paul Lambert coach? And what's the right percentage of sessions that you take and he takes? And what does it look like on a day-to-day basis?
He's a lot more hands-on than when he was a player. Than when I was a player. Sorry.
Okay.
So last season is a lot. There's a lot different between last season and this season. So because of the game turnaround, I now lead a match prep 1 week. Then say on the Saturday, the assistant manager will then lead a match prep going into the Tuesday night game, and then the manager may lead the third one. Okay. He's took more of a backward step, probably since COVID. He had the virus pretty badly and is still struggling, the manager.
That's right. Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's been less hands-on probably the last 2 months, 3 months. But still pretty hands-on on the training ground. I would say when I first come in, my main responsibility was that sort of lead-in session after the warm-up, whatever that might look like. Something to energise the lads, I suppose, trying to go with my personality and get them going for the main part of the session, which he or the assistant would take. That's slightly different now because I probably do more now than I did when I originally came in.
Do you miss playing, Gilly, when you're out there? Do you still get the urge to join in and play, or have you left that now? Or does your knee not allow it anyway?
Well, it's weird because you have short memory, don't you? I can remember being at Bristol Rovers and not being able to walk down the stairs properly. You have to go on the side because your knee's in turmoil. Wow. But then you feel okay for a few weeks or a few months or a few years. You think, oh yeah, I'd love to play again. I've joined in a couple of times, but very rarely. Right. I think in the role I'm in is perfect because you can have that sort of that fun and banter with the lads, and that's a big part of when you finish is obviously that dressing room, the camaraderie with the lads. But no, I don't particularly miss playing loads. I don't know.
No, you don't miss the aches and pains on the morning after.
I certainly don't miss those. No.
And just you mentioned obviously the pandemic. And one of my questions was, what have been the main challenges, and how are things different for you working with the players. You touched on the fact that it's just game after game after game. Can you give us a bit of an insight?
Yeah, so going back to March, the lockdown one, we gave the lads 2 weeks off, thinking we'd be back in 2 weeks.
Right.
And obviously League One never went back again.
No.
So the lads had a long time off. I was interested to see on John's presentation about the skills challenges and stuff they sent out to the academy boys.
Mm.
So we did lots of that. And with senior players, you might think, my God, tumbleweed. And it was to start with. And it took one of the senior players. We set them challenges every day. It was a different member of staff each day. And I think the manager went first and no one put anything up. And until one of the senior players did the skills challenge, I can't remember what it was. And then that went down really well. So that was one aspect of lockdown one that was quite good for team bonding, I'd say. And we were giving each other a little bit of stick, mainly about how big the manager's garden was. But yeah, then coming back, obviously pre-season was a very different pre-season. Originally in stage one, we were just training sixes, non-contact. So lots of technical practices, no contact as far as competitiveness. Right. So that's tricky. And then once we got through pre-season, we're now into the season, we're having to do lots of Zoom meetings. So today I had a Zoom meeting with the 2 analysts this morning before training. That was mainly to go over the match prep for Saturday. We were off yesterday. So a lot of Zoom meetings. We have Huddle, which is where all our footage goes on. There's been a lot of communication to and fro from the players for that, as far as individual stuff. So I'll share clips. So that's utilised far more than it was previously, and I think that we'll always keep that way of working now, which is good. Get more interaction between ourselves and individual players. Team reviews have been difficult because we're not allowed in the same room all together. So there's been more unit stuff.
Right.
So it has been tricky. The lads are used to it now. I think that we named a team 2 or 3 Fridays ago. We signed a player from Preston. Had the COVID test on the Friday morning. Named a team. About to start a meeting. Physio runs in and pulls him out. He had tested positive. So that's how quickly things can change. And then obviously the next day everyone had to retest. So it's been pretty full on, and you've got to be really flexible.
Right.
Really flexible.
Who's next up? We got a game Saturday.
Yeah, we're Shrewsbury away on Saturday, and then Northampton at home Tuesday night.
Because Shrewsbury's manager's suffering as well, isn't he? Steve Cottrell, he's suffering with it big time.
He is, yeah. And Big Albie's taking a team who used to be at Norwich as well, so that'd be good to see.
Of course, yeah, he did.
But yeah, obviously Steve's been hospitalised with it, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I think it's affected everyone differently. I had it pretty early on, and didn't know I had it. So it's I think it's affected people differently, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a few minutes left. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to jump on like being flexible and stuff. And obviously, subs are going to have to be ready to go. There's a good question here from Mark Tracy. How much attention do you give the fringe players? Often the attention is on the first 11, but what about the others, especially those that just miss out? How is sort of your approach to them, and is that a difficult session?
Obviously in my role, that's unbelievably vital. Those fringe players, the ones that are not playing, they're not only their physical condition, but also again making sure they feel I'm giving them care and attention, and it could be quite easy to hand them over to the fitness coach and go and top them up with whatever distance they need to top up. But I feel that it could be any football coach. A football coach needs to be leading the session. I think that helps with that group straight away. We have a big squad at Ipswich.
Oh.
We have a big squad, and I think so. I have sometimes I can have up to 12 extras. That if we've got a Tuesday night game at home, I'll take a Tuesday morning session so they can stay on the same schedule as the rest of the lads. And I really enjoy them sessions, but I think that's really, I feel that it's important that giving them the care they deserve, because they will be needed. Obviously, there's that many games, go through injuries, spells of not winning games. So those lads are, I think, are more important than the 11 starters at that point.
Gilly, don't make that mistake when you're interviewed, and there's loads of Ipswich fans listening. I think we're coming to the end. Well, there might be one more question, I think. Ginge again. Ginge, you'll have to text him, ask him that one. We're running out of time, pal. Gilly, before I hand over to Lou, before we finish, I just want to say thanks. Now, I remember being a very young coach, setting up a business in Kings Lynn, and you turned up at Linsport on an evening and did a talk and presented some bits out. I then turned up at Bristol, and you took a team around the memorial for me, and you're here tonight. Honestly, I owe you more than one beer. I really appreciate what you do, and every time you're just so honest, and the way you've talked tonight and you've reflected on everything, it's just been brilliant. I really appreciate you coming on, mate.
No problem, Steve.
Appreciate it. Top man.
You let me watch you work at Bristol Rovers, so that was part of my coaching.
You turned up a couple of times to see how not to do it, and then got a decent job. That was a cold night, a couple of nights on SBL Astro, wasn't it? Remember it well.
It was, yeah.
Oh, man. Libs.
Great stuff. Well, again, I say it every time. It's gone so quick. Another hour. Hope you've all enjoyed that, and the recording will be out, so you can watch it again if you enjoyed it that much. Thanks again, Matt. That was great. And guys, we'll see you on the next webinar, which is Saturday with
Stu James.
Stu James.
Yeah. Journalist and grassroots football coach.
It's going to be great. So it's not too late to book on. So if you think, oh, that sounds great, just email the admin email and book on. It's going to be a good one.
Good luck for the rest of the season, Gilly.
Cheers, Steve. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Liv.
Cheers, everyone. Ta-ra.
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 I was trying to see what Ginge put in that.
Hang on, mate. People are still in. Hang on. I think he's put. Oh.
He was kind, wasn't he?
Didn't just stay in, look. I'm going to remove John Morlin.
You're getting a bit of stick, mate.
Yeah. Did you see what Gaffer put?
What did he put?
He put, are you paying Mark Tracy £1 for every question he asks?
I really enjoyed that, Steve. Thanks a lot.
Mate, it was great, pal. Honestly,
Steve, you can stop recording now.
Oh, bloody hell! Yeah, I better stop recording. This is the problem now. It said, hang on. How do I stop recording? There you go.